There's a good shot of a red-bellied woodpecker. The red-headed woodpecker's name must have already been taken. And it is raining. Now on to the subject at hand. Monarch butterflies, milkweed, and also a tricky plant to transplant. There we go. I'll zoom in here so I'll give you some. You might see the adult monarchs buzzing around from flower to flower. They're not really specific. They go to feed on a variety of flowers. The babies, though, the caterpillars, they require milkweed. They have to have milkweed. And our monarchs population are being depleted partly because of milkweed is going by the wayside. Modern agricultural practices, even city zoning ordinance against weeds. There aren't enough milkweed plants to go around for the monarchs. So they have a hard time coming from Mexico all the way to the northern climes. I'm not talking about the west coast ones that go up through California, but east of the Mississippi River. They are having a hard time. Roundup ready crops just decimate it. Ordinances in Chicago and Detroit and other large cities against noxious weeds. Noxious weeds also include milkweed, and I talked to quite a few people here that have been cited, ticketed, fined, complained about by their neighbors because they allow milkweed. They're helping the monarchs. Part of it is ignorance, part of it is just people like monotonous green lawns. I have a lawn, which includes milkweed. If I was to go percentages, a very low percentage of my lawn is actually grass. I have plantain, I have violets, I have moss, a variety of things, which is good forage. I'm not saying you should go that route, but I do. No chemicals, no pesticides. Well, water is a chemical, I'll water. But that is that. I appreciate green, you know, whether or not it's lawn grass for croquet, the sport of kings. But in my case, you know, whatever grows there, grows there. I even mow around tall, interesting weeds. So here we are. Yesterday, I did some propagating of sweet flag, Acorus americana / calamus, and I'm slashing my americana and calamus because basically it's the same plant. One is native to North America, one isn't, but they're basically the same plant. It's like a Buick and a Chevy. So this is a tricky plant to propagate. This was, I'm going to back up, and you can see this dirt patch. This was the original vibrant, healthy milkweed patch, and it just started dying back. Other things grow here, milkweed doesn't. And so my theory is milkweed has this propensity to migrate. And the chemical in here that makes the caterpillars unsavory and untasty to various forms of birds, that chemical must build up in the soil, which makes it so the milkweed doesn't want to grow there. And I've transplanted it back into the original patch several times to no avail. It just doesn't work. They'll grow for a while, they won't spread, blah, blah, blah. They go into the yard, they go into my sweetgrass patch, they go everywhere, except here. So, my conclusion was I need to replace the soil or at least dilute that chemical. So, compost, pardon the seasickness, my weed box. I mulchify all the weeds and stuff like that and then let it sit in there till it turns into dirt. And I had great gobs of nice compost. And so I mix that compost along with the soil. See the sweetgrass patch and that mulch, that bark around it. I edge that and I get great gobs of good soil. And so I've mixed it in here to a depth of about a foot, stirring it around. Now I wait for these hard, on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as hard to transplant, which 1 is the hardest. Let's say, no, 10 is the hardest in this case. I get all mixed up here. 10 is the hardest, 1 is the easiest. Then in this case, week A would be the easiest. This would be the hardest. I wait till I'm going to get a rain event, and that's when I transplant. And I dig out as much as possible from the parking lot. Yes, I think milkweed would grow on the moon. It just didn't want to grow in my patch because that chemical buildup. Dig it out as much as possible, plant it in there. Now I follow the time-honored transplanting rule is that when you dig a hole to put a plant in to leave transplant shock. You fill that hole with water so the water will migrate to the surrounding soil and it won't act like a sponge and suck up the stuff when you water it in. So I fill the hole with water, sometimes twice, let it drain out, fill it with water again, it's ready for the plant. Put the plant in there, dig it in, water it in, water, water, water. Now you see this cage around it? That serves two purposes. One purpose is to keep my friends, the turkeys, from going in there and digging for ants and kicking them down, because I put the mulch in the gardens and the turkeys come and they swoop in like flying monkeys and scratch out all the mulch looking for ants. So that screen will keep the turkeys out. You may not have that problem in your locale. The second thing is, and this is what a lot of people do not do, I do it religiously with plants that are somewhat delicate in transplanting it. That cage will act as a frame for screening. If the sun comes out today, I shall get a tarp, I will do what it takes, an old sheet, whatever, cardboard, and I will use that as a frame to keep direct sunlight from hitting my plants. In this case, for probably a week. Some plants, you only need to screen it from sunlight to reduce transplant shock for a couple days. This milkweed is very delicate in transplanting, so I'm going to screen this stuff for a week. It is not going to get direct sunlight for a week. You can do tricky things like cutting back the foliage to keep the wilting down. I'm not going to do that. I want these things to be powerful, spread their little roots, and invade this area. These are the pioneers. And so I'm just going to screen it from sunlight, and that's going to keep it from wilting. You can see there's a little wilting in there, but considering I did this yesterday and they're not all flopped over and gasping for life, they've got a good start, and I'm going to continue that. I'm going to back up so you get the full flavor of it. There's our Monarch display sign, which seems kind of funny because there's hardly any milkweeds in there yet, but look at this stuff. It spreads via runners. There's some growing in the grass. It's all over the place, really. So I mow around it just to keep the milkweeds up. And so if I can keep those alive, they should do well. Common mullein, those are champions. And I like common mullein. Some people consider it a weed. It is technically an invasive. However, it gets overcompeted pretty easily, even though it's massive. It's considered a wasteland plant, so if you have construction, it'll take over and then it'll die away. So I am not afeared of the common mullein as far as invasives like WGM, wild garlic mustard, marsh thistle, of course, Japanese knotweed, Otoma olive, barberry, Japanese barberry. Mullein is not a monster in my opinion. I've got a few hound's tongues, and that's invasive, but I think it's an interesting plant, so I'm going to yank all of them except one or two. I'm going to keep that under control. It's a large plant, so it's going to be easy to control. And with that, I'm starting a new day. I made salsa, good stuff. To make salsa, you need some hot peppers, preferably serranos, or if you're bold, habaneros or ghost peppers, tomatoes, onions, either sweet or whatever, depends on your taste, lime, you must have lime, garlic, and maybe a little sea salt. I don't salt mine because there's enough salt on the chips. And unfortunately, I'm so tired all the time. I went to IGA yesterday, bought all the stuff for the salsa, left without one of my bags, and forgot the chips. So I went back this morning. Welcome to small towns. They had my name on it, so I'm good. I'm ready to go. The salsa is like in the house, melding all the flavors together. If you have any questions about transplanting, again, only plant native plants, or else plants that don't overwinter if you're in the northern climes, because you don't want to eat your woods with bad plants. Give me a holler. I'll answer your questions. If not, I'll research it and find the answers. Have a good one, everyone. Have a good one.